Quick, name an active NFL punter or an NFL kicker. If you're a fan of the league, you probably said Johnny Hecker or maybe Cody Parkey. Pat McAfee is retired. These are guys who really only have one job, and you know of when they do something either good or, like, really bad. But there's one NFL position you won't know a single player's name, one that every team currently carries. I'm talking about the majestic long snapper. The one position that just won't go away, that won't be absorbed, won't be outsourced to adjacent positions like the center, who already snaps the ball 90% of the time, to save a precious roster spot. Why this oddly specific NFL position won't die is coming up right after this. Oh man, that looks good, doesn't it? You know it's not good? Walking down the cereal aisle and not being able to eat any of it. Even the stuff that's touted as healthy is loaded with sugar, carbs, calories, even sodium. And on top of being bad for you, tastes terrible. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Magic Spoon. This is something I've been really wanting for a long time. A cereal that has 0 sugar, 11 grams of protein, and only 3 net carbs. And even better, only 110 calories per serving, which is significantly lower than that stuff I won't eat anymore. This keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free cereal comes in 4 amazing flavors. And yes, it tastes great. Even my kids think so. So after this video, click on the link below and grab a variety pack and try it today. And use my promo code FivePoints at checkout for free shipping. Or just go to magicspoon.com/5points. They're so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% guarantee. So if you don't like it, they'll refund you, no question. Again, click the link below, use my code FivePoints, and get free shipping. Magic Spoon. Let's take a look at why we need this position at all. The plight of the long snapper begins with a man by the name of Steve Diassi. Before Diassi, whose son would follow in his footsteps, long snappers were unable to block their position after snapping from a vulnerable spot. They weren't even expected to block, meaning the punting team was always at a numbers disadvantage when it came to protecting the punter. But the elder Diassi was the first guy quick enough to snap the ball and get into a blocking posture as opposed to the generally slower center, which evened the score for the offense. That allowed his team to send a gunner to each side of the field to track down the punt returner rather than keeping them in line to make up for a snapper who couldn't block. Diassi transformed the nature of the play. Watch a punt from the old days versus one from the late 80s post Diassi and you'll quickly get the idea. In a lot of respects, Steve really changed in my opinion. He changed the punting game in the National Football League and ultimately in college as well, Patriots coach Bill Belichick mumbled. Despite revolutionizing the game as we know it, and without us even knowing it, Diassi made fewer than $100,000 per year for the majority of his career, as long snappers were typically paid the league minimum and barely considered NFL players. The position has evolved over the last 100 years far more than you would expect for a task so straightforward. Or straight backwards, technically. Long snapping used to be something a tight end, linebacker, really anyone who could moonlight when their services weren't needed elsewhere. The first true specialist drafted was Patrick Manley, who was taken in the 6th round of the 1998 draft by the Bears. Manley remained on the team all the way until 2013. Not a bad use of a 6th rounder. Today, long snapper salaries average out to a little under $1 million annually. Seriously? To do just one thing? Morgan Cox, Baltimore's Pro Bowl long snapper, makes the most at $1.24 million per year. Denver's Jacob Bobenmeyer, a rookie, makes the least at $610,000 and also looks like a personal trainer. That's not a very big gap between the lowest and highest paid at their position. Compare that to quarterbacks where the lowest earner is David Blau at $430,000, while Russell Wilson will haul in $35 million this season. Despite being in the middle of the trenches, long snapper is actually a fairly safe position, which explains the longevity most of them achieve. Today, the defense isn't even allowed to line up a player directly in front of a long snapper in order to let them get the snap off without getting flattened by a defensive tackle. It's kind of like pity for the little guy. That accounts for snappers aging like quarterbacks. The NFL has its longest tenured long snapper and still active, Detroit's Don Mulbach. Called the Nolan Ryan of long snapping, at 38, Mulbach is in his 17th year as a pro. Just 10 more seasons and he'll catch the Ryan Express. But just 2 more seasons and he'll catch up to another long snapper whose name you might actually recognize later in the video, for reasons not so fortunate. So the real question isn't the need for the long snapper, that's pretty clear. The real question is why. If it's just one thing to do, doesn't the NFL simply train the center to snap the ball 5 extra yards and save the cap hit? Or teach someone just taking up space like Mitch Trubisky? The short answer is this: even though roster spots are at a premium and versatility is valued now more than ever, long snappers are one of the most valuable positions in the league, and few people can do what they do on a consistent basis. How many NFL players can throw a pass perfectly to the hands of a receiver from 10 to 15 yards away? Now, how many of them can do it backwards, upside down, and between their legs? It's something that requires constant practice, not just a spare time job for a tight end, center, or linebacker. It takes a two-handed spiral, something most of the population can't do with one hand. Mitch Trubisky. Mechanically, the act of snapping the ball isn't complicated, and it's also something you don't need to be athletically gifted to do. Except what father tells his kid to ignore the glory of scoring TDs and come bend over in the backyard for hours at a time? And then, at the highest level, do it in front of the world without ever f***ing up. But somehow, as valuable as they are, they're still replaceable. It's a bit of a paradox because unlike most other positions, there isn't a way to go above and beyond. At the end of the day, all that is expected is a perfect snap, and there's no such thing as a great long snapper. There are simply long snappers and bad long snappers. And no highlights unless they can get downfield and make a tackle, force a fumble, or recover a fumble, but even the best long snappers like Morgan Cox only make about 1 or 2 tackles a season. That's why most of them look like mechanics rather than elite athletes. But they're still as elite as they come. Without a good long snapper, a punt or a field goal is totally erased from the game plan. They are the ignition in the moving vehicle that is the kick. And if they're faulty, like starting your car during the Troubles in Ireland, the whole play can blow up in your face. Will Keys wrote that joke. I just tell the jokes, okay? Let's look at a game from week 1 of the 2012 season between the Raiders and the Chargers. In the middle of the action, Raiders long snapper John Kondo was injured and had to exit the game, forcing linebacker and emergency snapper Travis Goethel into duty. Goethel snapped one ball at Shane Leckler's feet, resulting in a turnover on downs. Then, to compensate for his inability to snap the usual 15 yards to the punter, Leckler was forced to line up closer to the line of scrimmage. That snap was on target, but the Chargers got an easy block. On the third attempt, Goethel again found the dirt rather than Leckler's hands, resulting in a third turnover. Essentially, when the Raiders lost Kondo, it cost them the game. They're crucial, and they're invisible by design until they aren't. Kinda like birth control pills. I wrote that joke. One bad snap and 20 years of goodwill could go down the drain. Just ask Trey Junkin. Junkin was drafted as a linebacker by the Buffalo Bills in the 4th round of the 1983 NFL Draft, the same year players like John Elway, Dan Marino, and Eric Dickerson were drafted. Junkin moved around from linebacker to tight end, but found a niche as a long snapper and long snapper only. And the longtime snapping specialist did the job from '83 all the way into the new millennium, deciding to hang him up in 2001. But the 2002 New York Giants, preparing for a playoff game, lost their long snapper due to injury and lured Junkin back. He was spending his retirement duck hunting, but couldn't turn down the opportunity for one last ride. Cut to the Giants' wildcard game against the San Francisco 49ers. The Giants jumped to a huge lead before quickly squandering it to Jeff Garcia and Terrell Owens. But down 1 point, they had a chance to win in regulation with a relatively easy field goal. Junkin, who had botched just 5 snaps in 19 seasons, put this all-important football too far left. The holder tried to salvage the play and throw deep, and Giants lineman Rich Seibert was interfered with. No call was made on that, though an ineligible man downfield was called on the G-men. The Giants lost on the botched snap, even though they should have gotten a do-over, and I'm still salty about it to this day. For 19 years, I tried to be invisible in my profession, Junkin said after. Once I put my hands on that ball that day, that f***ing snap was my fault. I think about it every day. It still jolts me from my sleep. I know the feeling, brah. 19 years, 281 games, and he'll forever be remembered by the last snap he ever made. It's the finest line in sports, and that's why the good ones, while unrecognizable on the street, are indispensable. So the next time you watch a field goal or a punt, watch the long snapper. You'll be the only one doing it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to check out the sponsor, Magic Spoon, from the link below. I'm 5Points Vids, and you made it to my next video.